So just a couple of days ago, I posted my full review for the Retroid Pocket Flip, a little handheld that has quickly won me over and has become my favorite retro handheld that I own. Now, I titled that review something to the effect of nearly flawless, which means that there are some flaws, else I would have just simply called it flawless. But of course, no devices are flawless. In this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over a handful of my biggest complaints with the Retroid Pocket Flip. Basically, what are the handful of small things I feel like they got wrong, things that could have been better for this device? If somehow you have made your way to this video and you don't actually know what this little retro handheld is, I'm going to drop a link in the description to my full review. I would suggest that you go watch that first, but I will very quickly kind of show you this thing as we're talking here. This is the Retroid Pocket Flip, and of course it is a clamshell device. It opens up just like this into this sort of clamshell form factor. Now, the first thing you may think when you see this is, wow, that looks a lot like a Nintendo DS, but it only, of course, has the 116:9 display. And that kind of gets to part of where I'm going with this. There is a lot of negative space here in the middle of this handheld. Now, they had a lot of different options potentially for what to do with this negative space. They could have put their start and select buttons up there. That might have been ergonomically a good place to put them, or even a better place to put them compared to where they actually ended up placing them. But I think that the best thing that they could have done with that space would have been to have used it for the speakers. If you flip it over on the back, this is where your speakers are, and they're not terrible speakers, okay? Like they're decent enough. And when you're holding the device and it's kind of, lifted up like this, your hands don't tend to really cover it too bad, and it sounds okay. But the moment you set it down on a table or something like that, and this is an Android device, so you could pair an external controller to this and game, or you could use this and install Netflix or YouTube and watch content. It actually sounds quite muffled because of the speakers being bottom firing, downward firing into the table. So I know there may have been some limitations, some reasons why the speakers weren't here, but man, oh man, having the speakers up here in the middle, facing towards you, or at least upward, would have been a really, really good idea as far as I'm concerned. So let me demonstrate exactly what I mean. I'm going to lift it up off the table, and we're going to start a song at maximum volume. And I'm going to set it down so that you can hear how it degrades. So when you're using the Retroid Pocket Flip, which mine I just realized had gone dead, which is why it is currently plugged in, you expect that when you open this thing, it should wake up the screen. And that does happen, but only about half of the time. So about half the time it wakes up, you hit your A button, and it dismisses your lock screen. The other half of the time, the screen stays black, which means you have to hit the power button down here to wake up the screen. Not a big deal, you might say. Well, it kind of is, because it's awkward. You open up and the power button is down here, and it's just in a weird place. I wind up kind of pinching the whole device and hitting the shoulder button at the same time as I'm hitting the power button. It's just in a weird spot for me. So they need to either fix things so that this always wakes up the screen, or it would have been potentially nice to have the power button someplace else. One good thing about that location is that you're never going to hit it accidentally, but I would have almost liked to have seen it, maybe up here in the middle as well, in this same empty space instead. It would have made it just easier to access. Now, this next one might be somewhat controversial, but I think that they need to go back to the drawing board a little bit on their actual launcher. You see, by default, you can choose between AOSP or the Retroid launcher. This is neither of these. Let me quickly show you what those two options look like. Let's jump into our settings. Let's go into default home app, and we will do quick step first, which is basically your AOSP launcher. And what you're looking at now is basically just a very, very bone stock Android launcher. Now, they don't even have an app drawer. All your apps are just on these repeating screens, sort of iPhone style. The other option is the Retroid launcher. Let's launch into that. And it's okay. Basically, what you're going to do is you add apps to it and you get them in a grid. Now, there are ways to add individual games that you are emulating instead of the emulator itself, and that is a decent function to have. But overall, there's just not a whole lot going on here. It's a very, very basic launcher, and it just doesn't really do it for me. But the good news is you can go to the Google Play Store, have to hit things twice, which I don't understand why you do that either. And you can search for something called the console launcher made by K2 Media. Let's go ahead and go back into my settings and let's set that back as the default launcher. And that's what we have here, and I really like this launcher. It's almost Nintendo Switch-esque. You can make your own folders, like you can see here. I've got Android games, I've got emulators, I've got streaming, and then I've got entertainment media, whatever it is I call it. And then down here at the bottom, you have the rest of your app drawer, which is alphabetized over here and looks really nice. And of course, your controls do work with this. You have your web browser, Play Store, music app, and settings. All of these things are customizable. So if you want to use Microsoft Edge, as I do, that's going to launch Edge. Your music thing, I use YouTube Music. Same thing there. It's going to launch YouTube Music. Overall, I think it's just a very nice, clean look, and it works really well. If I want to jump into my N64 emulator here, like let's do this, and let's jump back into Zelda, which I was playing the other day. And if I go home, that's the only glitch with it. Sometimes you see your folder still there whenever you first go home. That is probably the only thing about this launcher that I wish would get fixed, but that is a very, very minor problem to be dealing with, all things considered. So there you go, guys. That's pretty much it. Those are my biggest complaints with the Retroid Pocket Flip. None of them even approach being a deal breaker. I've been having a lot of fun playing some N64 games in particular, things that I wasn't really able to play on some of the other handhelds that I had, things I didn't think I would really miss not having that I really enjoy playing, but I find myself, even with those sliders, some people may think, hey, those sliders are probably bad. I'm kind of cool with them. I'm playing Ocarina of Time, having a pretty good time with those sliders even, guys. Really, really solid device. Like I said, full review in the description down below. Subscribe for more content like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.